What's up, you guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Smart Talk. We're talking about real struggles, real stories, and entrepreneurs that hear from the ground up. Today, I got my boy GT in the building.
Hey, what's up, man?
What's up, big dog? How are you?
Good, good.
Man,
Good to be here.
good, man. Finally got you on the podcast, man.
I know it's been like how over a year, maybe.
Over a year, yeah. So
Yeah,
you're doing a lot of great things in the community, and you've been trying to elevate a lot of men. So I condole you for that, bro. I really appreciate you trying to get men back on track and back on gear. So let's get right back. Let's get right into it. Tell me a little bit more about yourself, man.
yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate just the appreciation and everything. It's all about just increasing awareness, right? So yeah, what I do for a living is I help men, quit porn addiction, and it's all about just changing the habits, the lifestyle, and the self-image,
Mm-hmm.
and becoming a man who doesn't need porn ever again. So.
So what made you kind of go into that career field?
That's a good question. So I was addicted to porn, right? When I was young, I was exposed to porn when I was 11, right? And then I grew up in a more of a typical Chinese, right? Kind of like a household that's a lot quite traditional and conservative. So like sex and porn, all of that, right? It's the taboo topic.
Mm-hmm.
And but here I was, I was just actually hanging out in my cousin's apartment. No one was there. I was actually just bored. I was looking for something to watch, so I went through like these tapes, VHS tapes, right? And then I just saw one. It's like I didn't know what it was. There's no label or anything like that, and I just put it in. It's like, whoa, what is this? But I ain't gonna lie. At that moment, man, my brain just like, whoa, this is like Disneyland. To be honest,
Yeah.
like any man who actually would say like, oh, you never watch porn, no, you're lying,
Yeah.
man. Come on, let's just be real here, right? If you've actually been exposed to porn, right, and then you like it, that's normal. Okay, it's normal. Why? Because porn is designed, to actually hit a certain part of our brain, our limbic brain, our lizard brain, right? That a lot of the stuff, right, cannot hit, right? And it's literally giving you signals that hey, you're about to procreate, and that's a part of DNA,
Mm-hmm.
right? But anyway, I digress a little bit. When I was young, I also dealt with a lot of trauma. I lost my brother when I was 8 years old, 9 years old, right? Around that, and he was only 5. So for many many years, right? I was just really angry. There was a time even when I was really young, I was even suicidal, honestly. Mentally, and I never really like did anything to try to like execute it, but it was in my mind, to be honest. Went through a lot of depressive moment of my life, and then to be honest with you, porn was actually my safe haven for many many years because it gave me the comfort, right? And it's not even about the porn; it's about how it makes you feel. Because men are not really addicted to porn per se. It's more about how it makes the man feel,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes you feel like wanted, right? But the only difference is that it's on the screen, right? It's on the screen, and it's not real. It doesn't have the scent, it doesn't have the smell, right, of a human being, and the touch, right, and the interaction and trust building, none of that. But anyway, for like over a good amount of years, like 10, 15 years, I was addicted to it, right? And the definition of addiction, a lot of people would ask, well, what do you mean by addicted? Right? How many times do you watch? Right? Actually, there was a time that I was able to actually like stay off of it for like a couple months, 3 months, right? And then suddenly, like when I would actually like slip or relapse, right? I will binge. Sometimes like a whole day, and even just like a couple times, like 2, 3 times, man, you drain, man. And as men, anyone who is listening right now, right, that you are completely drained after you've actually like jerk off a few times, right? And then after that, you don't want to do anything. You become less motivated. You become less organized. You have brain fog, right? And you just want to just stay antisocial because like, you're not really proud of like what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just be honest, right? You know, like no man is actually proud of like, oh yeah, I just jerk off to like something, you know, like come on now,
Mhm.
right? And then, but anyway, coming back to around like when I was mid 20s, you know, and around then I was already working with my mentor, J.K. Macy, and I've known him from pretty much like a different life. We used to do door-to-door sales together, right, in the South, right? You know, that's how I put myself to college, right, in the United States, and that was an amazing experience. But that's what how I met him, right? You know, he was my manager, and then he was also my mentor, and he was like telling me, hey, you know, bro, I'm actually starting out this, you know, I'm gonna help more men, and actually pretty much was putting me on a training, a coaching, without me even realizing it, to be honest. Right? And I was literally using the porn reboot system before it was even called porn reboot. So, and then I went through it, you know, and I actually got like so much benefits from it. I become more confident, and yeah, and before I know it, I started actually helping him, you know, with the enrollment part of the business, because there's a lot of people need help. Like we
Mhm.
get like hundreds of applications on a daily basis, and then just people needing help, and that's why like you know the company just keeps growing and growing, you know, to the point where it is now. So.
Why do you think it became such a big problem?
Mm.
I know you told me that what do you think 1 in 5 people they're just accidentally get exposed to porn? Is that correct?
Yeah, not just five people. One out of five kids
Wow.
are being exposed to porn, and the average age of the kids who are exposed to porn nowadays is 6 years old.
Is it just like they're naturally scrolling on like social media?
Yeah, it's just in our culture, in our phones, right? You know, back then there's no the access to phones. It's not like now. Now kids are way better with technology, you know, than the last generation. But now we actually just see through another crazy revolution. I actually just saw a stat that because of ChatGPT and AI, right? For the first time, they actually did a study. Kids' IQ is actually lower than the IQ of the parents. That's crazy, man.
Mhm.
Right? Just because like we're just so used to like images and videos and instant gratification. I'm not even talking about porn. I'm just talking about in general, just really quick information and just summary. We're looking at summaries, right? You know, and the whole Twitter 140 characters culture, right? You know, like long form content. A lot of not just kids, but you know, adults are having a short term attention span to the point that we cannot even go through a long form content in a deep level anymore. Right? It's literally fucking up our brains.
Mhm. What's the biggest lie men believe about porn that's actually keeping them stuck?
Thought is, you know, that's just a normal thing. Oh, I'm a dude. Ah, it's normal to watch porn. That's one of the biggest one, right? You know, and it's okay, you know, to watch porn, right? And then because, especially in the United States, I would say more so because it's so normalized, right? You know, people were trying to actually. That's like another side of sex positivity, right? While there's value of be able to actually talk about sex in a positive way, however, because now we're actually getting into a different era where not just we're talking about sex positive, but we're like, oh, it's actually not good to shame people who talk about sexual behavior as a negative thing. Like now we're shaming people who actually just try to be more aware of how some of these behaviors impact us or may impact us negatively.
Mhm.
And I think one of the biggest things is holding a lot of men to even admit they may have a problem. It's not because they don't want to talk about it. It is because of shame.
They feel shameful for what they're doing.
Yeah, it's the male ego. And because we also, as men, right, based on evolution psychology, we come to this world, um, we are a natural performer. We have to perform, right? Like our value in on this earth as men is to perform, is to create,
Yes, sir.
right? And for women, like biologically, I'm only talking about biologically, right? Is to procreate and to take care of kids, right? And okay, a lot of people is gonna like, you know, bash me on this, right? But that's just on the biological level, I'm all about equal opportunities. Men or women want to be swap roles. That's totally fine. If as long as it's within your values, it's what you really want, not like what you're forced to do,
Mhm.
or not like what someone else influence you to do and you don't really want to do it, but you're doing it, right? Um, it goes back to this. It goes back to like being a man who values critical thinking, who values autonomy, right, and who values having self control. So
Do you think most men are addicted to porn, or they're just undisciplined?
I think 70% of men have certain level of addiction to porn. That's actually based on an actual survey that's
Mhm.
done,
Mhm.
right? And honestly, that survey, specific survey I'm actually referring to, is actually done more so in a close, I would say, segment of men, which is more like it's because it's done by a Christian organization, right? So that data is probably skewed a little bit by that, like at least in that um, community, right, of men, they're definitely against that because of their how they feel about it. But I do believe in a bigger level, a lot of men are unaware of how their porn viewing habits are impacting their brain. There's a book called Your Brain on Porn, right? Actually, they did a whole study with comparing MRI images with porn reviewers, and also drug addicts. It's the same part of the brain that's lit up, right? So, and then it creates the ecstasy inside you, right? And it floods your dopamine, to the point that you need a certain level of like high to feel normal. And now, like without that, you're like, oh, well, I guess life is boring, right? Life is like you're not able to actually even appreciate the simplest thing, like hang out with your dog, hang out with your girl, or hang out with your parents, or even like just people that you love, that you care about, right?
Mhm.
Or even just sit alone, looking at the outside the window and enjoying, the view, or enjoying the weather, or just going for a walk, like simple things, or even reading a book, right? I think a lot of people are losing that ability.
Do you think most men or a lot of men are addicted to porn and they're married to and they have a spouse?
Oh yeah, half of our clients actually, have a committed relationship. More than half of them have a committed relationship or are married.
Well, why is that? Because they can get it naturally instead of just looking through a screen.
That's a good question. That's probably because of a lot of possible different reasons. One of the most common one is that they actually in actuality have a sexless marriage, right? Uh, the definition of sexless marriage, at least based on WHO, right, World Health Organization, is less than 10 times per year, right? So a lot of men nowadays are facing that. Typically, right after you have a first child, right? And granted, that's understandable because as a woman, it takes a lot of effort, to go through the laboring process, carrying a child, bearing it, and actually give birth, right? It takes a toll on the body, and I'm all about respecting the woman's body, right? And but I think a lot of men during those time they started acting out more with the screen because it's so available.
Yeah.
Let's say the wife's not available because of a health issue, right? But there's also other things is that when they're not even supposed to stay married, they're actually in a dysfunctional marriage, right? And they still just try to hold on to it. Well, what does a man do? They look for something else on the screen because it's so available and it's free, but it is not free. Why isn't it free? Because you are the product. When you're watching porn, you are the product, right? Because porn is free. You don't have to pay like money. You don't have to swipe your card or anything like that, technically. But what they're really selling, they're selling ads. The ads is the product,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It's like, and the ads is where they monetize it. So you're the product. They're selling your attention. And I think a lot of men don't even understand that, right? And now we have what? OnlyFans. OnlyFans is just I don't know about last year, but I know like 2024, they did 6.6 billion. Right? Come on,
That's crazy.
in a year. That's insane,
Yeah.
right? And do you know that that's more than all of these traditional porn sites combined?
Pornhub, Razors.
Pornhub, Brazzers, and all that stuff and everything, right? They're all in one company. I believe that main company is MindGeek, right? They generate about $500,000 a year, right? OnlyFans is 6.6. It's
Wow.
insane
Why is that? Why is OnlyFans? I feel like it's blowing up. I feel like a lot of girls are.
because essentially, like, I'm just gonna call OnlyFans what it is. And some of even my female friends may bash me for it, right? But it is what it is. It is digital prostitution. It is a digital property because you are exchanging financial transaction with what? With sexual attention, right? And now you don't even need to even give up, an actual physical interaction to get money.
Yeah.
And I actually don't blame a lot of girls, especially those who are attractive, to do that. But it is, you literally try to actually shortcut life, easy way mode. And you just got to ask yourself, what value are you giving to the world, right? And then is that actually in alignment with your values? And only that, I hate to say it, for girls who are on OnlyFans, once it's up there, it doesn't matter how many paywalls you build up, right? Essentially, um, it's out there. It's forever gonna be available on the internet for them to view.
Mhm.
Just ask yourself, how would you feel when you have a child, when you have a family, and when your kids accidentally view it? Make sure you're okay with that. Right? I'm not saying that it's bad or good. I'm not trying to actually put any judgment here. I'm only saying that, are you really good with that?
Yeah.
Right?
What's your opinion about men dating girls that do OnlyFans and they keep the business side
It,
away from the personal side?
it
You.
goes back to the same thing that I'm gonna say. Are you actually good with that? Right? And you have to be fully accepted that your kids is gonna see their mom having those content out there when they grow up.
Uh huh.
How do you feel about that? Are you really okay with that? If you're okay with that, yeah, go for it. It goes back to that. It
Mm.
goes back to accepting for what it is, right?
How does porn addiction affect a man's confidence and masculinity?
It's well, I mean, you can just anyone who is listening to this, especially if you're a man, right? Ask yourself, right? How you feel about going out when after you watch porn. How do you really feel about yourself, your confidence? It goes down, right? You get to a point that you're not even able to actually connect with people as much, or as well, or you're not able to actually connect with your wife or your partner as much. Actually, as a matter of fact, I have a lot of guys who actually I work with, right? A lot of them not even that old. Some of them in the 18, 19, 20, young. They have porn-induced erectile dysfunction, which means that they're not able to actually get up or get fully erected unless they're watching porn, right? And then they're not able to do that when they're actually with their partner, right? That's a symptom that porn may actually be affecting your biochemistry a lot more than you actually even think,
Mhm.
right? And if it's already impacting, yourself, in that level, in the physical level, biochemical level, bro, wake up, pay attention to it,
Mhm.
you know, do an experiment, stay off of porn for like, let's say a week. If you do it like daily, maybe stay off of it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. You may or may not be addicted, right? But stay off of it and see how you feel about yourself. And if you actually see there's an increase of sharpness or mental sharpness or even confidence or energy, well, ask yourself, which version of yourself do you prefer? Do you prefer someone who actually uses porn to cope, right? With just everything that happens in life, right? To cope with lack of intimacy, to cope with You maybe you using it as a stress reliever. And one of the easy excuse I used to say it myself, what? Oh, I just use it to just go to bed, just to feel, a little, more relaxed. Yeah, you induce that, but there are other ways to do that. You don't have to depend on porn, or masturbation to do that, right? And then granted, masturbation it's a natural thing for one to do as a human, right? But why are you doing it? What is the motivation behind it, right? I'm not even against. Earlier, I was telling you, right? I'm not even anti-porn per se. I'm more anti-addiction. It's the addiction part of it that's holding us back, from actually really living life to the fullest,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And then a lot of guys, they just like, oh, let me just do no fap. Oh yeah, hard mode. 300 days, 120 days, hard mode. No fap, right? Completely, right? And while those could be a fun challenge and whatnot, but if you're addicted to porn, man, that's not a solution. Because what you're doing, you're not really addressing. You're only addressing the the symptom. You're not addressing the underlying issues, right?
Mhm.
It could be like you have lack of intimacy or lack of emotional regulation, lack of crisis management skills, right? Lack of discipline, right? That's also a huge part of it, or lack of identity, or lack of high self image, lack of healthy self image, right? Your self image is low. I used to have that. I used to think, I didn't think much about myself. I have really low self image, self esteem when I was growing up. Honestly, it was because of porn, right? And it actually definitely affected, my ability to communicate myself and express myself as a human being. And obviously, if you're not able to communicate and express yourself effectively, how are you supposed to communicate yourself and sell yourself to a woman that you may want to actually have a connection with? You're
Yeah.
not able to.
Uh-huh.
You're gonna be like cower down, and you're gonna be a lower version of yourself,
Mhm.
right? And it's okay, man. If you are that version of man for yourself, ask for help. That's the first thing. Or be aware, at least be aware, of like who you really want to be. And are you where you really want to be yet? If you're not, well, don't just, cower into, oh yeah, I'm just gonna live this way. Well, guess what? You're gonna be addicted to porn for the rest of your life. And you have to be okay with living that way. Are you okay with that consequences? If you're okay, well, that's your life. It's your decision.
Mhm. Do you feel like men that lack intimacy, they just take the easy road and resort back to porn?
Yeah. Because it's so easy, right? It's available 24/7. You can hide, right? Compared to like drugs and alcohol, drugs you can't really hide. Once you drink enough, oh yeah, you're gonna be like inebriated, right?
Yeah.
And you're not, and we actually can tell and can test it right away, right? Drugs as well, right? We can see it right away, right? And we can test it on your blood. Actually, as a matter of fact, in our program, right, we even have a um, what you would call that, like a high peak performance optimizer kit, and we actually ship it to our clients. So certain clients, they wanted to look at under the hood. We actually ship them, a blood test. We test it. We'll ship it back. One of our coaches, health coaches, certified health coaches, he actually does it, and we'll break it down for them, right? And we can tell if they've actually been masturbated a little bit more without intimacy, looking at the blood.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn, you guys do some crazy stuff, huh?
Oh yeah, we go deep, We go deep. We look at the actual data, not just like, oh, how you feel. That's important too, the emotional data and the self-awareness, but also the biological data as well. We do look at it, and we actually also help you to optimize it, with either just basic sleep hygiene, right? Meditation, supplementation, and of course workout, and there's a whole protocol that we actually get a lot of our clients into.
Mhm.
So
Is it okay to like casually masturbate if you're not watching porn? Because you know how men are.
sure, yeah. Well, it goes back to this, right? Like if it doesn't affect how you feel about yourself after you masturbated, or even porn, or for that being, right? Like if it doesn't affect your day to day life, right? And it doesn't affect like who you really want to be, like with your values and with your standard. Uh, who gives a shit if you watch porn or even masturbate?
Yeah.
You know?
Can someone be in a healthy relationship while still be addicted to porn?
It could be tough, honestly, right? Because at the end of the day, you are like, it goes back to your values, right? I think like a lot of our clients, right, that we do attract, men that we do attract, are men who actually just, they want that extra edge, right? And if you really want that extra edge, right, you may want to actually experiment with being away from porn and being away from masturbation for a while and see how you perform both, on your KPIs, right? With your key performance indicator of your work, right? Or of your business. We do attract a lot of business owners and we attract a lot of executives, right? And we even work with pastors as well. Pastors also have reached out to us because there's so much shame. And well, who's going to help pastors? We can help pastors, right? A lot of people think that, oh yeah, let me just read the Bible more, right? Or go to church more, right? Or just go to the therapist. But a lot of times, they're not experienced with working with men who is so good at lying. Porn addicts are liars. Absolutely. Come on, let's just face it, right? And why? Because it's so easy to hide. You hide around, right? And especially like if you're someone who just literally just, like, come on, like, and a lot of guys, have done this before, right? I've done this myself, right? When like, you're supposed to actually like maybe meet up with someone, right? You're like, oh yeah, I'm under the weather. I can't go out, right? But what you really were doing is you just acted out with porn. Would like, and then like after that, let's say you see a bunch of missed calls from your buddies, right? Would you like proudly tell your buddy, oh yeah, I was watching some porn and masturbated. I just feel like a little bit like lack of energy, right? Most probably you won't.
Mm-hmm.
And you just lie about it. You make an excuse, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and that's why, like, in our community, in our program, we are really good at what we do is because of accountability, right? We call it out as it is, right? We can already tell the excuses and the lies, way like before, right? Our clients even actually tell that themselves, right? And that's the beauty of it is you have to be surrounded with like-minded men, right? That's why like a lot of these unfortunately 12-step groups, right, they are designed mostly for substance abuse, right, either alcohol or drugs, right. Those I think like at least is better than nothing. At least you have some support. But with porn, man, you can lie about it, right? And then only that, every single meeting you're showing up and saying that, oh yeah, hey, my name is so and so, I'm an addict, right? uh Bro, why will you actually keep introducing yourself as an addict? Well, you're going to reinforce that self-image. Well, guess what? Ain't working. It's not going to work. Like at some point, you're going to go back to who you keep telling yourself that story,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's why you got to ask yourself, right? Like, do the people that you hang out with, are they going to help me to get out of this? Or are you even have anyone in your life that actually can show you the way? But before showing you the way, you got to be able to actually honest with yourself, right? And do you have someone that can have this conversation with you without you feeling the shame, without you feeling the guilt, who can help you to hold a space for you so that you feel understood? And that's one of the biggest things that we do provide. We provide a safe, non-judgmental space and discreet to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Well, why is there a lot more people like high profile people is that you said business owners, pastors, why are they starting to become more frequent customers and starting to reach out for help?
I think it's because they have so much stress that most people cannot really understand. And then sometimes, like porn is just so available on our phones, right? 24/7. And that's like one of the easiest way to actually get that quick dopamine rush, that instant gratification, right? Let's just be honest there. So, and only that, it's also the easiest thing to hide. And I think a lot of men there, they're like, we do work with them a lot more because, um, like they have no one to talk to, right? You know, for example, like what is a pastor is gonna like confess, you know, to the church member? No, he's gonna lose the respect
Yeah,
from the church member.
might lose his job.
Yeah, he probably will lose the job. He will probably lose the congregation and lose the respect, right?
Yeah.
Is a dad is gonna tell like the son or like you know the wife about this? Most probably not, right? There are some men actually are open about it, you know, to talk to wife, you know, open about it, and some wives may be actually accepting and actually understanding, but most wives you're gonna actually trigger them, right? You know, they're gonna go through betrayal trauma, especially if you are a man or a husband, right? Who your wife caught you, right? I actually have a client. He actually literally reached out to us because he's actually in his 50s. They were on a vacation. The wife caught him masturbating to porn, you know, as she walked into the hotel room, right? They were literally in Hawaii having a vacation, having supposedly best time of their life. But instead of that, that become the worst nightmare, right? Why? Because he's never aware that this was a problem, right? A lot of men are just not aware. They
Mm.
just think this is not a big deal.
Yeah, it's normal.
Yeah,
Because I feel like it is. I feel like it's so normalized now.
yeah, I know.
Because everyone's just talking about it, and
I know, yeah, and only that, like, if especially if you're like a dude, you know, who is in like a more male dominant industry, one of the really common one we do work a lot, you know, are the people who in the military. Doesn't matter which discipline, right? You know, you could be in a marine, right, or you could be in army or even like air force, right? You know, in the base locker room talk. What do you talk about?
girls.
Girls, porn, right? You know,
Yeah.
sex, all that, right? There's nothing wrong with having those guy talk. I do that as well with my boys, right? You know, but more on the dating, you know, aspects of it, right? You know, but not porn. But and I've seen that. I have like a client, and actually he when he was, uh, deployed, right? There's no internet. What do? They exchange hard drives of porn. It's insane.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is getting crazy.
It is, yeah. We even actually have a general actually we work with, right? You know, and we work with a lot of like we even have a actually one of the current, I'm not gonna name names obviously, NFL player, right? You know, who is on the team, right? Who just won the Super Bowl.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's our client, right? One of them, right? You know, so like it doesn't matter how glamorous or how amazing your life is, right? And it goes back to like you gotta just be honest with yourself, and if you need help, it's okay to reach out for help. And of course, just to be really clear, right? We're not just like only specifically work with men who are like, you know, celebrities or high value or high status or even a leader, right? We do work with college students too. We have college students reach out to us from an 18-year-old, you know, and we have guys all the way to 94 years old that we worked with before,
Mhm.
right? So because porn addiction, the addiction part of it, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. It doesn't matter where you grew up in. It doesn't matter, you know, how old you are, right? If you're married or not, right? It doesn't matter. It will hit you, especially when you're a man.
Do you feel like the government should have more regulation as far as porn and OnlyFans being available, accessible to us? Because I know there's some countries that have porn banned, or they're not allowing OnlyFans to be downloaded in a certain IP address. Do you feel like the government should do more of an action to fix this issue or problem?
I think if let's say restriction, you know, would could help. Um, but I at the end of the day, it goes back to the human being. Like as much as the government wants to do and restrict, right? You know, the reason that if you were to look at, actually there is a site, right? It's literally called Pornhub Insights. There's no porn in it. It's just data, right? You know, and it tells you all the data, and majority of the views are from the U.S. You know, not it's not just that because it's more open here, but it's also a lot of like other countries they're using USA VPN to access porn, right? So it goes back to that. Like, doesn't matter what the government does. There's always what there's a will, there's a way on a different direction.
Mhm.
Like, if you really want to look for porn, you're gonna look for porn,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
You
you'll
know,
find it.
so like there's only so much like external restriction can restrict a man, right? It goes back to like you have to actually set that standard. You have to actually seek out for help. You have to actually put yourself
Take the initiative.
around. Yeah, take initiative and take full responsibility of your life, man. Don't just like keep pointing fingers. Oh yeah, it's the economy. Oh yeah, because of this happened. Oh yeah, because my wife doesn't want to have sex with me, right? All of that stuff, right? No, stop doing that. Just take full responsibility of your life, right? And actually, especially now with the whole entire um, political climate that we actually in right now, with the global climate, right? With the war, there's a lot of uncertainties going on, and it's only gonna get worse,
Mhm.
right? We're only seeing the beginning of it because before we know it, the prices is gonna go up with the living expenses. Especially, it's gonna start with what the oil barrel. It's already starting, right?
Mhm.
We're already feeling the pain already. A lot of people who are working, and then um, that is gonna actually increase a lot of just overall. If we will look at like the average quarters level of like the current, humankind, oh, it's like probably one of the. I wouldn't be surprised if we're actually in a record high in terms of averages. And how do most men they actually use it to cope? Porn is one of the easiest one. A lot of men, are struggling in silence that we don't even know,
Mhm.
and they don't even know. And that's why I'm all into like just increasing the awareness, of this. It's not even about like shaming anyone who's still addicted. No, like far from that, right? Actually, it's about talking about it, normalizing talking about it as a problem, and it's okay to talk about it as a problem. And that let's look at the data. Let's actually see, look at your life. Hey, would your life improve when you stop? Maybe not stop porn forever. Maybe just reduce it. Let's start there, and then go from there, right? And if you try to stop, you try to reduce it, you cannot reduce it, that is a huge sign that you might be addicted. That's really the definition of addiction.
Mhm.
You want to stop it,
But you can't.
but you can't. It's not about the number of times, right? Because if it's someone who is like really religious, you can't, you want to stop it. You don't even want to do it, but you're doing it, well, there you go.
Have you seen people transform their lives after quitting their porn addiction?
Oh, absolutely. 100%, 1,000%. Right? I mean, I transformed my life personally. Right? I used to be really timid. I used to be really like shy, right? Just publicly as well. I used to have a lot of anxiety, right? And a lot of like negative thinking process, right? And thinking pattern, and to the point that I I I I feel so grateful, about where I am right now in my life, and I'm just really grateful that I'm in a position where I can actually impact and help people, you know, in a positive way, right? And a lot of the clients I work with, I like one of the things that I really enjoy is to receive, the DMs and saying that, hey, GT, I'm married now, I have kids, they're sending me the wedding photos, right? And then sending me their graduation, some of them because they were a student when they actually start working with us. Some of them they will send me like literally a picture of the congregation because they just become so much more aligned with their values as a pastor. They no longer feel like they are a fraud, right? Or like they're just doing one thing and doing another, in the back, when no one is watching, right? I even have like literally government federal officers, right? Uh, like people who actually have meetings with the White House, right, on a daily basis, that they also have problems too, and I get DMs from them and private messages from them, right, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to actually like help men, to create that hope and to have the opportunity to be honest and see the transformation. And that nothing really excites me more, every single day to wake up like that, right? Because the only reason I actually still keep like putting out content and actually, like sometimes I have calls like for 16 hours a day, right? That's how busy we do get, right?
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, like and now like I think with the whole current climate, man, I think more than ever, a lot more men is gonna actually start having more courage to step out. I think we're in the transition of like where porn addiction has become more and more normalized, slowly but surely, and hopefully, right? And there's less men, struggling in silence.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you give a lot of your clients hope that they can change their lives and get better because you've been addicted yourself?
I don't think I'm actually the best person to say that. I think the easiest thing is to actually go up to our YouTube channel. We have a whole playlist of a success story. They should actually, they are the better judge of to answer that question than I am.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. We actually have over 100 of them, on that playlist. So I can include that as well, and one of the links, for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. You
Yeah.
got to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have a whole like one of the things that I really have a lot of respect for. It's my mentor and the head coach and founder of the porn reboot system, Elevate Recovery, right? And he's an amazing creator in terms of content and an amazing thinker, and pretty much an innovative. I would say even like a pretty much a movement, maker, right? And we are in the current movement of a reboot movement, right? The reason we use the word reboot is because recovery, it doesn't work for porn addiction because you don't have anything to recover to it. You were addicted to porn when you were 6, 8, 11 years old, right? What are you recovering to it? You have nothing to recover.
Mm-hmm.
You have to change completely. You have to reboot, like how you reboot like a whole entire computer system.
Yeah.
You gotta go through a full reboot. That's where you actually see the actual real change, right? And then we have over like 2,000 videos that's already published on our YouTube channel, Porn Reboot YouTube channel. And anyone who might actually be wondering that you're like, oh, I may actually have a problem with this, yeah, just go to our YouTube channel and check it out. Literally listen to it and just be open minded, right? You may or may not even like need us
Mm-hmm.
or we even work with us. Actually, as a matter of fact, we usually have a waiting list. Right, we when you apply, we do have a team, and we're actually still growing the team as well, so we actually can take more people, right, and to help more men. But yeah, like just check out like our free resources, right? You don't have to pay a single penny, to actually even begin to actually get the benefits, from our work actually.
Yeah.
So
Before we had a conversation, I knew it was a porn with men. I knew it was an issue, but I didn't know it was like an epidemic at this point, and it's getting really bad.
yeah, there's like 7 out of 10 men, has a certain level of porn addiction, like I said earlier, right? It's like you just throw a rock, right? Out of like within like 100 men, the 70 of them have certain level. There's different levels too. Some levels are easier to deal with that you can probably like just be more disciplined, hit the gym, whatnot, and you'll be okay, right? But I think a lot of men, probably half of them, probably need professional help. So.
That's a huge number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it goes back to this, just like, don't be afraid to actually have that conversation, at least with yourself. And then if you need like some guidance to have that conversation, yeah, reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do you feel like going to the strip club is better for men than to watch porn? Because at least at the strip club, you can physically see what.
yeah, in that at least in that sense, from that perspective, yes, I do agree. However, the strip club or any happy endings in like massage parlors or even prostitution, actual prostitution for men, that's a different problem. That problem is transactional sexual attention, right? Then you are gonna train your mind to go through transactional sex, right? Transactional sexual attention, right? And yeah, like I mean, I have friends, who actually work in the strip clubs, or even OnlyFans, right? And some of them I'm still like friends with them, right? Or even acquaintances, And I don't shame them as long as they're happy with their lives, right? But it goes back to this. It goes back to like, are you in alignment with how you want to live your life? So
If you had like a magic button and if you pressed it and it deleted like Pornhub and all these porn sites and OnlyFans for good and it never come back, would you click that button?
mm, I don't think it's actually for me to even click it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I think porn, it's been actually part of our society, for the longest time. The only difference is now is that we have high speed internet pornography, right? Because before that, porn lives in a different world, a different form, I would say, right? It started as what? Carvings in the older age. We have carvings of naked women. Why, like, that's just like our ability to actually appreciate like beauty, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, I'm not even like personally against porn. I'm only against the addiction of it, at least personally, right? I can only speak for myself. So
What habits replace porn when someone's trying to level up or not end up going to porn ever again? What habits do they typically tend to go to?
building your life, building up different parts of your life. Actually, in porn reboot system, we have a concept, that's literally popularized, and actually really started by J.K. Mazie. It's the concept of reboot capitals. There's financial reboot capitals. There's social reboot capitals, and within that, there's also dating reboot capitals, right? And also physical reboot capital with your health, mental health, physical health, and so on, right? You have to make sure that you look at your life as like there's different buckets of like places, accounts for you to invest, and just look at it. And if you have like different gaps, well, you gotta put attention into it. And if you're addicted to porn, you don't even have the capacity to look into these and actually increase these different parts of your life, right? And then the way that we like to actually use it is like the video game, right? Analogy, when you play a video game, there's different stats, right? And all we want to do is increase all these different stats, right? You just rate yourself 1 to 10. Okay, where you at, right? Okay, well, if you're like a 2 or 3, right? Well, let's bump it up, to at least above average, right? And
Hmm.
if you really want to be way above average, be like exceptionals, well, at least bump it up to like 8, 9, or 10, right? And then go from there,
Hmm.
because you're so have such a rich life and engaging life. Well, you're not gonna be thinking about porn. Like you want to save energy for those things. You want to save energy to have an amazing sex with your wife or with your partner, right? And then you want to have an amazing capacity, mental capacity to actually be present with your kids. Be a role model for your kids, right? So you don't feel like guilty and shame. Like you're like, oh, like, you have your child here, or your baby here, and you're next door, like acting out with porn, right? And then before you know it, your daughter is gonna be around the same age as the naked woman that you're viewing. So
That's I could tell you have a real big passion for this industry and really want to help people change their lives and get back on course.
thank you, man. Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that, and thank you for having me to have this opportunity and this platform to increase the awareness of men, right? And it goes back to just I just want to increase awareness, and that's it.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of men they're just soft now, or starting to become super feminine, or they don't know who they are no more,
Yeah, and
and it's
there's
sad.
also a saying like porn has also emasculated men, right? OnlyFans has emasculated men. Now, like like we're actually like with this, we're literally creating a whole entire generation of Sims. To be honest, let's just call it as it is, yeah, and you just gotta be honest with yourself, man. Whoever you're listening, man, bro. Like, just are you simping, man? Seriously, are you kowtowing to like the girl that you like, right? It's not just about like porn, right? Are you literally like breaking your own rules and your own values just so that you can actually have sex with one chick, right? Like you gotta have standards, man, right? If like let's say like your chick is not respecting you and your boundaries and your rules and who you really want to be, and you've been above, in terms of communicating with her, well, you may want to question yourself. Is that a relationship you want to remain in?
But I feel like they would still remain in it just so they can have the sex, right?
A lot of men are like that, right? You're thinking with the wrong head, right? You're thinking with the wrong head, and you become getting into what? The instant gratification, right? And it goes back to that, like as long as it goes back to your values, right? And there's nothing wrong with having casual sex, right? I'm not saying that you shouldn't have one kind of sex or the other or the next, right? It's more about like, are you in alignment with your values? It goes back to that,
Mm-hmm.
right? You gotta always just question that and actually understand that and actually really um, be honest. Don't lie, don't cheat, right? Yeah, like when you lie, you cheat. Well, that's where the drama starts, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on here and giving people the wisdom and knowledge and helping people transform their lives. That's a really great thing you're doing. Bringing positive impact to the community, especially with men, because I feel like men are suffering right now and they really need it. So that's super dope. So hopefully, anyone that does need help or needs some type of assistance, they can reach out to you or your
hmm
team or send you a DM.
yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me because I know like it's a hard thing to talk about as men. We have our male ego. We want to
yeah,
protect ourselves, right?
a lot of pride,
A lot of pride,
a lot
right?
of
You're
pride.
afraid of being like judged. Well, that's why we provide a discreet and private space for you to just share everything, and it's okay. And there's zero judgment. Because we've heard it all, man. We've heard it all, right? And then we have guys, who actually literally reach out to us because he's been acting out with transgender individuals when he's not gay, and he's heterosexual all the way, right? And he got HIV. Don't wait until you got HIV, before you reach out. That's all I have to say about that. So,
Uh, well, thank you, man. I appreciate you coming on here. I know you're moving out of the country soon, so wish you the
Mhm.
best of luck in Malaysia, right?
Yeah, Malaysia. Yeah. Well, I'm not like moving out. I'm just like gonna actually be a little bit more of a changing like my mode, of base. I'm gonna be more of a nomad, right? Rather than like being in one place.
Yeah,
So,
for sure, man. I
yeah,
wish you best of luck in your journey. And
absolutely.
yeah, thank you, brother. I appreciate you coming on. Before we end today's podcast, guys, I'm going to give a huge shout out to our two main sponsors. We got Merino Media and Hookah Kings. And I'll see you guys next time on the Smart Talk.